Hi, hello everybody. Welcome back from afternoon refreshments and the earlier breakout sessions, which I hope you all enjoyed. With us now for the first session of this afternoon is Richard Rae, who's Enterprise Systems Team Manager for the University of Southampton, and Ian Thompson from Tintri. And they're going to tell us about a different approach they took to their fairly recent, I think, procurement and selection of a new storage platform.
Excellent, thank you very much, and thank you.
Sorry, just before I start. Somebody's handed in some glasses at front reception, so if you happen to have lost some.
Yeah, they've been picked up.
They've been great. Lovely,
No.
thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Pleased to hear that. Good to see that somebody's got their glasses, so maybe they'd be able to see this wonderfully small screen behind me. Okay, so thank you for that. Thank you for the opportunity for being able to talk to you today. So my name is Ian Campbell, and I'm a systems engineer at Tintri. So today we're going to share with you a data storage refresh journey that myself and Richard has undertaken at the University of Southampton.
I'm Richard Rae. I'm the Enterprise Systems Management Team Manager. I am responsible for the operational aspect of the infrastructure for the University of Southampton. So the format we're going to go for today is actually going to be more of a conversation between Ian and I, and we're also going to be talking to Mark here, who is actually the vendor from XMA that we used to put all of this together, and describe the journey that was undertaken to actually replace our entire storage array. So to give a little bit of a background, we were sitting on hus arrays. I've got around about 500 terabytes worth of virtual infrastructure. They were struggling, they were getting to the end of their days, and we needed something. And what I didn't want to do was just buy more of the same and ignore what the needs of the university actually were. So our key challenges were the complexity and the difficulty of management. So we were running hus block on fiber channel. All absolutely fine, very, very classic. Heads, disks, silos, fibers, data stores. Welcome to 1990. Very performant, absolutely no problem with the technology itself. Hus are fantastic storage arrays. Our CPUs on the controllers were running somewhat hot, to around about 80%. It's not a good idea to be over 50. At which point we decided to engage XMA to actually bring a different view of how it is that we were going to find and replace our storage arrays. So my techies went off and engaged with XMA and had a little look around and came back with some fantastic numbers. Around about 150,000 IOPS, thank you very much, and a petabyte of disks, and I want this much of flash, and I want that much on SAS, and I want that much on NL SAS, and it's going to be fiber. No. So I started asking other questions. I started identifying other needs. Management and reporting against block storage is actually very hard to do. How do I know that that server is causing a problem and is actually creating a bottleneck? Under block you can't. It is extremely hard to identify which block makes which VMDK, which makes the performance issue. So I started putting on other requirements, and at that point I decided actually we're going to do it a completely different way. So we came up with a set of requirements. I wanted to know what was doing what, so which VMDK inside VMware or Hyper-V, doesn't matter, was actually causing a problem. How would that then be reported? How would I get my capacity planning out? So trend analysis. Causing of the storage array can be very interesting as well. And this whole list of non-technical requirements came out, and I think that was the first time we actually approached it in that kind of manner. So at which point we engaged XMA, and Tintri were already part and parcel of the journey at that point as well. Because around about 12 months earlier, we'd spun up a research cluster dedicated for our researchers with CUDA cards in there so they can actually use the graphics, and a Tintri hybrid array. That gave me a lot of the answers in this arena. So when we were bringing forward, and we brought our vendors online, and we started bringing Tintri online. We brought Tejan online as well. We had a look at Pure, had a look at Hus, had a look at HP, had a look at Dell. We had a look at pretty much everyone. To be honest, I don't care what the badge is. I'm interested in what it can do. So details we're looking at, so as I say, Hitachi data systems were a problem. Fiber channel, well, in around about 2 years' time, I was going to have to renew my brocade switches. That's a big, big number. 8 brocade switches, all ports populated. We are talking several £100,000. Didn't want that. This is what I currently have in my environment. I've got 4 Tintri stores, so these are flash arrays, 1 hybrid, and this is just a little baby hybrid on the side, which is actually a development system. All it's there for is to take some firmware updates, because I do not want to firmware my production system without testing it somewhere else first. So at this point, I'm going to leave it over to you to actually identify the business advantages that are coming in with Tintri.
Absolutely. No, thank you for that, Richard. So what we'd like to do as well is if you've got any questions throughout the presentation, just raise your hand or attract our attention somehow, not by throwing glasses or bottles. That would be, I wouldn't like that. But if you do have any questions, then please, we're trying to make this as informal as we possibly can. So some of the business benefits that the Tintri array gives you is really simplified management. So really the absolute nirvana of storage administration is the term set and forget. Okay, so a lot of vendors out there will promise you that capability. However, at Tintri we are very, very confident that we actually can deliver on that. Okay, so Richard referred to a couple of his pain points and a couple of his challenges in the previous slides of system management. Okay, so I'll go back to Richard now and say, Richard, how long would it typically take you to manage a performance-related issue, or even just carving out a new environment from a storage perspective? How long would that actually take you in time?
Well, to actually carve it out wouldn't take me any time at all, mainly because we don't do that at all.
Right.
So we just present one big bucket and off it goes. But to actually identify where the performance hit is, which it was the biggest driver behind the decision we went down, we were talking hours.
Yes.
Whereas I would like that to be minutes. So I can tell you if my CPU is constrained within 10 seconds. I can tell you if my memory is constrained probably within 20. Several hours to find out if it's the disk that is actually causing the student system to not be online at intake is an unacceptable position.
Okay. The other point that we'd like to highlight on this screen is the fast installation time. So typically with any project that involves infrastructure, you would typically have a project plan of days, weeks, months. So it's typically a very long, drawn-out process. And again, at Tintri, our solutions are very simple and very easy to install with the minimum amount of disruption. And also, there is a fair amount of project planning involved, but it's certainly not the same amount as you'd expect from an enterprise-class storage platform. So again, I'll say to Richard, what was your experience of the overall installation and the ease of that installation process?
So the physical one was actually quite quick. It took around about 2 days. The POC, the actual testing, is where we really pushed. So one of the things my team is excellent at is testing to destruction. Saying to my team, I bet you can't find the limit of this, which our account manager actually told us, is a very bad idea. For anyone who wants to know, the limitation of a Tintri box is 204,000 IOPS, at which point it actually crushed dump its kernels and raised a support call. That took us 3 days to find. The limitation of the Cisco kit that is behind it was 2 pings. We got that down to 0 with our POC and our testing. So to bring a storage array online of that, it was a blend of multiple skills. So obviously we had the technical resource of Tintri in the room, we had the technical resource of XMA in the room, and my own people as well, who pride themselves in putting something in once, and in 5 years' time, if it hasn't failed, then they consider they've done a good job. If within those 5 years something's gone wrong, then they actually beat themselves up and they try and work out exactly what. We're only 2 or 3 months into this one, so I'll tell you in 5 years' time if we're successful. So bringing all those POCs in, we decided to basically go forward and have a look at what it is it could do, what it could offer us. So, sorry, I lost track.
One of the other points as well is increased application performance. So it's all well and good to have a storage platform that can deliver gazillions of IOPS, but a key point that we deliver with the Tintri storage array is that we give you lots and lots of IOPS, as Richard just mentioned, 204,000 perhaps, but we will also give you those 204,000 IOPS within a sub-millisecond latency target. So that's really important for your applications, okay? Very, very important. Every vendor out there, every storage vendor, we all use the same industry standard components, the same SSDs from the same manufacturing plants. So really our differentiation here is giving you the amount of performance but from a guaranteed application latency perspective. That's a key thing to consider moving forward. Okay.
And that is something actually I will corroborate on. So one of the things we noticed on the block, and this goes back quite a fair few years, I'm actually issued from a storage manufacturing company, so I've seen storage in pretty much every single form that it exists. Block will just stop. If it's run out of queue depth, if you run out of processor, it will stop. Tintri, like several other vendors, does have a clause built into it. You'll slow down before you actually stop, which is very good in terms of continuity. Not so good in trying to actually get some more money to upgrade, because it's not broken. Why would I pay some money?
One of the other key points as well that the Tintri storage platform can offer, and something which Richard, I believe that you saw this as a real key advantage, is our data analytics and our machine learning of your environment. And so would you like to just share with us your experience of that and why that's important to you?
So when we went to market, these requirements, so what are my arrays doing? What are my VMDKs doing? Or VHDs, it's agnostic, it doesn't matter. Drilling down to the exact machine was a requirement. It was quite a hard requirement. And at the time, Tintri were the only ones in the market that would actually deploy this. I wouldn't be surprised if in 12 months' time that changes and other players will arrive in that space. But it allows you to understand just what is happening on your arrays, when and why. So I have a server which is a multi-threaded LDAP writer. So it grabs the LDAP logs, writes them to the disks. It does that in a multi-threaded fashion. Basically, it absolutely saturates the links as much as it physically can. Under block, that translated to 15% usage of my CPUs. Under Tintri, it's quadsed. I actually back it off. So yes, it's writing the logs a little bit slower, but that's okay, because the database responses are still being guaranteed.
Excellent, thanks. Should we go on to the next slide?
No? There we go.
He's bigger than me, so I'll move this way. So we've had a brief discussion on some of the things around the actual project itself. So again, we've just got an example of some Q&A questions here that some of you might be thinking about. So again, we'll just go through some of these. If anybody's got any other questions, it's at the top of their mind, you know, feel free to speak up, because there's quite a few of you out there. You can't all be going, oh yeah, this is great. Okay, so interaction is appreciated. So again, we went through why Tintri, how you evaluated the market. So that's where XMA, the partner,
Absolutely.
come in and they helped you. They did a market evaluation.
Yep,
an
we looked at
appraisal.
every single storage vendor going and benchmarked it. I've got the spreadsheet and everything. Did a very good job of that. It just happened that Tintri were the ones that popped out. Could have been Tejal, could have been anyone.
Absolutely, but that's the whole purpose of that exercise. And then the proof of concept, Richard touched on that. And again, how easy was it to deal with a proof of concept, getting it out from a vendor? Because sometimes that can be quite tricky.
Yeah. So once I got through all the legal loopholes and the paperwork and this and that and this other, it took around about a month from start to finish to actually do that, which I think is a record in higher education. It took another further 2 days, I think it was, configuration time, and then we went to town with it. So I bolted a cluster of 14 servers against it, and then we started our testing. So in terms of the proof of concept, it actually shook out some assumptions that were made in the documentation of Tintri, which we then fed back. We've actually enhanced the design, so we applied the baseline design of Tintri, and then we thought So what happens when someone goes, whoops, on this switch in the middle here, and just pull random power cables out? Because, well, that's fun. So by doing these kind of testing, we actually managed to design a fabric behind that would actually do justice to both sides of the equation. So the fabric in the middle has a 0 downtime. You can go in there, take a switch offline, and it will continue without dropping a single packet. I believe your documentation has been updated to show that new design.
Yep, thank you for that. Thanks for helping us there. Yes, all good stuff, all good stuff. So, okay, so we've covered the proof of concept and how easy it was and the actual value you got from that. So let's focus in now on the procurement process, which, let's face it, in the public sector, higher education, the procurement process it's a means to an end, isn't it? So for some institutions it can be fairly straightforward, for other institutions it can be very, very painful and challenging. So, Richard, how was your procurement process?
Painless. Shockingly. And this has nothing to do with Tintri or anyone else in the it has all to do with the SSSNA framework. So I picked that one for one reason and one reason alone, Lot 4, vendor-led solution. And that is what prompted my mind right at the beginning of the project of actually going to the vendors in this occurrence XMA, going, this is what I need. I don't want to go and buy heads, disks, flash, da-da-da-dum. What I need is around about 200,000 IOPS, petabyte of usable storage, resiliency, and you're not allowed to give me a single unit because I don't want a single chassis that can break and take all my data with it. And from there, that started that whole process. And the framework itself worked absolutely beautifully. We had Tintri in the room, we had several other vendors, we had XMA, we had Cisco, so we were working and interacting directly with all the vendors, and we went through that framework. If none of you have used it, I would urge you to look at it. It is a very nice framework. It's well written and very easy to understand, very easy to enact.
Excellent, sounds good. And then finally, I mean, from a technical perspective, changing an existing legacy infrastructure based around fibre channel, that's a whole lot of investment on your part, not only an investment from a monetary perspective, but also in some of your staff. You know, a lot of people would have built some very successful IT careers based around managing the complexity of a fibre channel SAN. No doubt a few of you in the room have got those skills. So to go to your team and say, you know, I'm going to be presenting something that's not using that legacy environment, how was that received?
They were absolutely fine. It was me that was actually the stick in the mud.
Oh.
So around about 6-7 years ago, I had an extremely bad experience of file-based storage. Extremely bad. So I didn't want to move away from fibre. I was raised on fibre, used fibre, I know fibre works. Tried NFS once, it didn't work. Because we had the research cluster already using NFS, all of a sudden my arguments were null and void. NFS doesn't work. Really, that's been working for a year. Yeah, okay, hang on. All right, sorry. So from a team's point of view, it was actually a blessing that we had that array in first. And that was budget constraints. I didn't have the money to go and buy a fibre switch. I needed a research cluster. I needed to deal with that problem. So we had some hosts kicking around that used to be in our VDI. They had extra network cards. We got a Tintri popped in as a proof of concept for research. NFS'd it up, off it went. 12 months later, oh, still working. Okay, I guess my prejudice against NFS was obviously wrong.
Okay. Take this opportunity to take any questions from the floor. Anybody got any questions at all? Ah, excellent.
Yeah, James McCaffrey to UCL. Could you comment on the kind of switching costs, you know, and the kind of timeframes from where you started off?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just about the kind of transition itself, in terms of the costs and the timescales and the resource required to do it.
So in terms of the cost itself, we did drive a very, very good deal across the board. So I got the storage arrays and the switches for less than the fibre equivalent would have been. In terms of the implementation, So let's look at the skill sets first. So I'm very lucky that I have some highly skilled people in my team, whether it's a storage, virtual, or network. They are amongst the best I've ever worked with. So they were bringing their expertise. Obviously, we had XMA bringing their expertise, and we had the technical people from Tintri as well. So to actually implement and design out that network fabric itself, because that, at the end of the day, is the core of everything. You get that wrong, I don't care how good the two ends are, it will not work. I'd say probably around about 2 weeks of actual man hours between that testing and then redesigning it. We went through multiple iterations of designs, not physical, but logical. So the physicality is simple. There are Nexus 9Ks all the way through in pairs, but they are logically wired in a specific way. And that's where we gained a lot of the value of that testing from. We actually delayed the project at one point because I wasn't quite happy with losing a ping between switch failures. I wanted at least as good as my fiber, which loses nothing. So yeah, that's where we redesigned that and put a lot of time and effort. A storage array is a storage array. It's a bunch of disks. A server is a server. It does what it does. It's going to do it as well as that, and that's it. But that middle part is actually where you really invest your time, that effort, and that attention to detail.
Excellent. Thank you for your question. Any other questions at this point? Would you like to wait for the mic so it picks up on the recording? Thank you.
Hi. In the Gartner presentation this morning, disk is dead. Do you agree?
Yep.
You've got some disk in there, though.
I've got some flash.
That's the question.
Yeah. Disk is dead, but it's not. Whatever's going to happen, you're going to have disk somewhere. So it's whether or not you want to outsource yourself or not is actually what the question is on the table. I have a data center. We are very much entrenched in that we want our services with us. We are looking at clouds. We are asking those questions. But at this point in time, my estate is inside my control. My disk was running out. I needed more storage. I can't go and steal some from Microsoft and put it in my data center as much as I want to.
You didn't want a petabyte of flash?
Usable flash. So because of the way Tintri and several other products work, we're actually relying on dedupe and compression. I've actually got 400 terabytes of physical raw space. But I'm achieving, so one of the POCs, one of the things I had to fall out of that was 2.8 times. Anything below that, the deal was off the table, because that's what I needed. We hit that during the POC, and we are currently running at just over 3. I'm not full. So as with all dedupe and compression, the more data you have, the better that number. I've got a 5-year lifespan here, a few months in.
Thank you.
Again, thank you for your question. Are there any other questions from the floor at this stage? Don't be shy.
We've got 2 minutes left.
2 minutes. Oh, here we go.
Hi, Jamie Hancock from Cardiff Met University. How did the costs compare to other vendors for your storage solution?
Really well, actually. At the end of the day, any purchase is driven by money. The technology could be the best on the planet. If the price tag is wrong, I'm not going to get the funding for it.
That's why I asked the question.
Yeah. So the cost of the entire solution was less than the equivalent in fiber, bearing in mind that 2 years later, I would need to renew my fiber switches. So the whole solution came in at under £1 million.
Compared to other vendors?
They were the cheapest by quite a margin. So a couple of vendors came in minus the fabric at more than that.
Thank you.
It's the old story, drive the contract.
Excellent question. Thank you. Oh, might have time for one more.
Andy Wally from Durham University. It's actually 2 questions. Do you present that storage to a hypervisor or to your end users?
Hypervisor only. It's currently sitting under VMware, but one of the requirements was to be hypervisor agnostic. Okay. I don't know what hypervisor I'll be using in 2 years' time. It might be VMware, it might be Hyper-V, it might be Zen, it might be QEMU. Don't know.
And another quick question. How do you back it up?
Sorry?
How do you back it up?
Oh, that's an interesting one. we are currently running a POC of another backup system. So my main backup system is TSM, which, welcome to 1970. It's file-based, agent-based inside the server. It's horrible. Very good back then, not fit for purpose for my current environment. I'm 95% virtualized. So we are looking at image-level backups. There are abilities within the array itself. It's been consciously decided not to use those, but to use a different platform. Because if the platform fails, there is a chance that backup facility will also fail, which then means basically I'm stuck. I'd rather go onto a different platform and use it from there. I'm happy to talk further details afterwards if you want. It's quite an interesting project and it's running right now. Okay. We've got, I think, 30 seconds just about. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.